Welcome to the Wealth Help Desk. I'm CJ Collins. I'm here with Dylan Sanat, and today we are talking about emergency funds. We're going to jump into why it's important to have an emergency fund and some of those life moments that just kind of happen with it. But ultimately, I'm excited to be here with you today, Dylan. It's a great day to talk finance.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's a very critical matter because it's something that people don't like to talk about. They're a little bit, always nervous of it because I think a lot of people don't understand that bad things happen. It's going to inevitably happen. You're going to roll snake eyes.
Yeah. And honestly, I'll jump right into our first slide. I mean, we have this idea of what an emergency fund is for, right? And so I say you might think it's different than what I think is an emergency and how we use those funds. But ultimately, there are unknown costs that show up. And most Americans don't even have a plan to be able to pay for any of those unknown funds that show up. And so what do? They go
Credit card,
yeah.
Things.
That's right. They go try and find money from somewhere else. Maybe they pull it out of a 401k or a retirement account. But that's why this fund exists, so that you can show up, deal with the unknown, if you would, and then go on with your life. But the first slide is that 43% of Americans can't pay this without debt.
Yeah, a random $1,000 expense is something that, if you're somewhat affluent, it seems trivial, but for seemingly more than half Americans, because I think between Bankrate and U.S. News, they've said this is anywhere between 43 up to 53%. So that's around half of Americans aren't capable of paying just a random $1,000 incursion of something. It could be your windshield and your new fancy Tesla goes out. That could be you have to go to the emergency room or something like that. Like these costs are going to incur over your lifetime, most probably, and it's something that unfortunately so many Americans aren't prepared for, and a lot of that comes to because they don't think it's realistic to do it. Like $1,000 seems like a large number to a lot of people, but it's something you can chip away at over time. And I just don't think enough people value that.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is like $1,000 only covers certain emergencies, right? Like, so you're going to love this.
I'm excited.
If we went with the example of like home ownership. And so actually, let me take a step further back. There's stages in life, right? When you're a teenager, you're kind of waiting for your parents to pay for everything, and that's fine, right? And then you go to college, you're in your 20s, and those 20s are pretty nasty in the fact that you normally don't have much of an emergency savings, but you also don't have a lot of needs, right? Like in the hard times, like you can kind of just deal with it, right? You can buy ramen noodles to eat if you need to, but if the transportation goes first, that's definitely something that you have to try and fix, because if you can't get to work, then you can't make money, and these other things kind of explode from that. But if like your air conditioning goes out in that situation, it's like maybe you just deal with the heat. Right? Maybe you don't fix it.
Yeah, and that's why, this is something that's a whole different topic with property tax and everything else in the world. But like the car is the thing that is most probable going to cause that incurred expense. And it's something that also you're reliant on for your income. So if your tire goes flat, if you do get a cracked windshield or the alternator messes up, something which it's going to happen over the tenure of a vehicle, especially if it's an older vehicle, which affording a new vehicle is a whole different expense. And it's like those things just kind of compile, right? Because if you can't go to work, then you can't make money, and then you can just spiral very, very quickly. And that's why, to me, it's very critical for you to be able to set aside money and begin chunking away kind of at that savings fund. And it's like, when you look at that, like, what is a good number for that? Like, is it something like, if you've got $1,000 in the bank, while that might make you better than half of Americans, do you really feel good? Because, I had a situation where a couple of years I had left my corporate job and I was self-employed. I didn't have insurance, and because why wouldn't I start racing dirt bikes when I don't have insurance? Because that's a logical play. I ended up breaking my leg, and in that process, it cost me over $28,000 in medical bills. And most people would not be able to afford that. And I mean, I didn't like to afford that in any capacity, but it's one of those like making better decisions than I made in that moment.
Could have saved 28 grand if you just paid for the insurance or whatever.
Or if I just wouldn't have been racing dirt bikes without insurance. It's stuff like that to where you got to know your risk factors and your risk tolerance. And we're all going to make mistakes, and we're going to learn the hard way just like I did. But I'm hoping that people learn the hard way on lighter examples when they're younger instead of when they're older.
Totally. And so like we're both in our 30s now. And we have families, we're both married. I have a child. And so there's like certain things that I'm realizing that I wouldn't want Sarah and Luke to go through. Right. And so like if the air conditioning goes out in the house, like that's a big deal, and we need to fix that relatively quickly.
What if there's copperheads in your crawl space?
Or if there's snakes in your crawl space, don't recommend that as a path. That is not fun either. But there's just emergencies that show up, and you need funds to deal with those emergencies because they really can halt your life in an instant. And I think if I took this to the next level, in retirement, in your 60s, in your 70s, 80s, there's going to be more things that you're not physically capable of doing that they might fall underneath this emergency, kind of bucket, if you would, that you're going to have funds to pay for, to fix, that you don't want to pull out of retirement accounts that are going to be or whatever. Because if you had $1 million today, but you had, and this is like the Elon problem, but like Elon has all the companies and all the stuff, but he's very illiquid. Because he just borrows against that.
Totally.
Because he doesn't necessarily need the cash, because he probably doesn't experience a ton of different emergencies in that way, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the average everyday American, if you were to take your life savings and you put it into the S&P 500, that's a good investment choice, but it's bad for when the emergency shows up because you have to pull that out and you might take a loss on it. You might pull it out at the wrong time.
100%. And it's also where, again, when you think about your lifestyle and like what age you were at and what you're kind of currently going through, it just, the whole process changes, especially, we joke that whenever you get older, you just see things a little bit differently, but it's just because you have more learned experiences, which frequently is mistakes. Like how many times can you headbutt the pavement before you stop doing the thing that's causing you to fall to the pavement, right? And I think you get a lot of confidence with emergency funds too, because you're not worried about getting nickel and dimed. You're not like, if you're capable of affording a newer vehicle, you have less concerns about vehicle maintenance because your vehicle is newer. It's under warranty. And that's where some people feel those safety nets. And that's why I think for normal life scenarios, like there are people who get sick today that don't feel like going to the doctor because they know it's going to be expensive. And that's something that, in America, I think one of the reasons our health is so poor is because people do have concern with going to the eye doctor because it's expensive, going to the dentist because it's expensive.
Or getting in the ambulance is a big one nowadays because that one is a big bill. And sometimes you should get in the ambulance, but it's not necessarily the most physically responsible choice to do so.
Yeah,
right?
100%. And that's where it's like, we use this analogy where it's like, bad luck is going to come at some point. And when it does, it's like, what kind of shield do you want? Do you want some, like, we're looking now, and I think the stat is that 32% of Americans don't have any degree of savings. So that means they're not prepared in any capacity for any small incursion of a charge like this. And that's like, it's crazy to think that nearly a third of our citizens are not capable of handling anything. That's your kid needs $200 in books for whatever thing he needs, right? Sure. That's Sarah needs new tires on her car, whatever. And that's crazy that a lot of Americans live in that. But again, I don't think it's because they don't make the income to do that. I think it's because they don't set aside the money. And it's not a priority. Just like everybody says, you can have a million problems in one until you have a health problem. Then you have one. Yeah. And it's the same thing with finance. If you are, going to the movies, you have Netflix and all this other stuff, money's not an issue. But then when you got to have $1,000 bill, money's a big issue.
Yeah, exactly. And it's how it happens really fast too. I think the one that we haven't talked about, and I also want to revisit the amount as well. So let's start with this one thing, which is unemployment, right? So you lose your job. So that money that was coming in, that was paying for everything, all the expenses, maybe if you were saving anything, putting it into an investment account, whatever. But ultimately you have to get to a spot where you can weather the storm to get a new job, right? And for some people so this is actually a recent transition I had on this side, but I was super cash heavy because I was trying to plan for like 6 months without a job. And then I realized that's not realistic for me because I've never, like, if I wanted to work, like I was always a week away. Like I could find the job and get everything wrapped up where I'm going to get income within the next week. Now, that's not everybody's style, but it's now my style. And so because of that, I have less money in emergency savings that I need because I can, like, I know I'm going to go find a new job and do the next thing if I needed to do that. Now, I don't think that's right for everybody because certain people do take a long time to find a different job and kind of transition through that period. So a lot of folks have said 3 to 6 months on the time when it comes to it. Hey, so for me, I've gone to about 2 months. So like I can survive 2 months and then I have to figure something out. And even for me, it's like, that's so unrealistic, right? Like the emergency might happen, but it's like, we can find the next thing, right? But I think that is something that people don't think about, that 6 month mark. Because I was holding probably 9 months at one point of savings. I don't know. How do you feel about it? Where do you kind of sit with it?
I was a little bit of a different case. I mean, I was really big into the FIRE movement. So like when I had a corporate job and I worked in the real world, so to speak, I was just trying to make as much income as I could as possible to try to live off of my, incursion of interest per year.
Yeah.
And, that way I could just kind of walk away as quick as possible. So for me in the beginning, it was reasonably cash heavy because I didn't know what the market would look like. We grew up through 2008. We got to see our parents kind of struggle through that.
Sure, yeah.
And then by the time COVID came along, I was already, pseudo retired. I was doing my own thing. I wasn't, working in corporate anymore. But so up to that point, I always had at least a year in straight liquid cash. And that was just because
I was
always
cash.
100%.
Yeah.
And it was just because I would also do, not like sketchy things, but like I would just buy cars with cash or like opportunities to invest and make more money. So cash to me was always king. And I would never let it get probably below 3 or 4 months. But that was just always because it was my net concern, right? Like I saw my parents struggle financially, and seeing a number in a checking account, there's a degree of solace that comes with that. You feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
But I also like that you can put money in savings. And like, to me, the savings money, especially when you're getting paid on dividends and other stuff like that, is like, that's mailbox money. It's something I put away. I don't think about. My accountant tells me about it. I get dividends every now and again and stuff like that. And it's like, when I think about that type of stuff, it's like, I like that because it's set it and forget it. But for me, there's a lot of peace of mind to being able to, open up a banking app or log into your system or whatever and be like, okay, cool. Like, hey, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of folks, some of the emotional pieces of finance is especially when you don't have that in place. So that if an emergency happens, you are going to kind of have to go on that debt train. It just puts you in a really negative mental space really
100%.
quickly, right?
Totally. And that's where the graphic we showed a second ago, where it's like you think about this little Archer tower as the bad luck, kind of coming down and shooting on you. And, bad stuff is going to happen. It's inevitable. You're going to get a flat tire. Something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
But when I look at this chart, it's like the guy with 0 is for sure stressed, but they're stressed even when an arrow's not coming, just because they know it could, right? Yeah. And then even when you got 3,000 kind of in the bank or whatever that is, maybe that's 1 month of savings, maybe that's 2, there's still a little bit of like in your case, if something happened and you had to pull money, you could move money around.
Sure.
But then it's like, do you really want to sell that gold or that stock or whatever? Because it might not be the best time. But then when you feel to whatever your number is that you're comfortable with, then you're like, dude, I don't care what happens. Like, I'm good. I'm not worried about it. And it's like such a thought in the back of your mind where like you literally sleep better at night. You feel better. You're worried about other things. You start worrying about, how do I grow my money? How do I make more money? How do I enjoy more time with my family? How do I get more experiences? And that to me is a really pivotal transition when it comes to life in general, because you don't want to live in fear. And the emergency fund to me is like, I'm a big proponent of, there's a point where money doesn't buy happiness anymore. It buys safety. But once it's bought that safety, like everything else after that's just do what you want to do. Enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the message to all of you is, hey, take the moment to figure out how many dollars you can put aside every week, every day, whatever that might be, towards an emergency fund, because that's really where your safety net begins. And you'll start to feel better knowing that is at least your first line of defense against the craziness that happens in life. Because we know there's so many stages in life and some of them are harder than others.
Yeah.
And being a 22-year-old with no issues and no worries is totally dope, but that doesn't last forever.
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make is they see that emergency fund as extra money. And it's not.
Yeah,
the emergency fund isn't extra money. Emergency fund is for just that. It's for an emergency. But that emergency could be, it's a little bit of a stretch to say it's for a new car. But if your car is sketchy and about to blow up and you need it for your job or whatever, like, okay, maybe you can kind of squint your eyes and tilt your head. You can get away with that one. But for the most part, like, you just got to remember, like, that's money you set away for a bad day. If it's not a bad day, you don't touch it. And I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble.
Yeah, you heard it here first. If you need to buy a new car, use your emergency fund. Dylan said so.
It's situations. Situations.
Let's go over to our next topic here. And this is a fun one because it is using the power of compounding interest.
Yeah.
Time is the the material that you lose every day, but if you take advantage of it, you can make lots and lots.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you hear this all the time. Somebody will say, if you would have bought Apple stock 25 years ago, you'd be worth $5 million.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't have got the new smartphone for $1,000, you'd have $300,000 in retirement.
Yep.
But those things are really true. And the biggest piece is it's not about picking the right blue chip stock. It's not about any of this stuff. I'm a big proponent of like just throwing an index, throwing something safe, so throwing some aggregate, but like you just got to get it out of your account, whether that's automatic withdrawals or kind of whatever feels good for you. Like I'm I'm not a person that, I don't check my accounts that frequently. I don't like to see numbers in that context. I just like to know that, hey, I'm good. I'm cool. I'm a very frugal person, much like you. So it's like, for me, it's, hey, whenever you get your check, send as much as you can over there.
Yep.
And then that money is not real to me anymore. It's gone. Yeah. It's impossible to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's easy. I think just like the emergency fund, when you have access to funds, you spend them.
Sure.
Right. And so part of it is like having the discipline to say, hey, these funds are not touchable. I do not see them. And I actually recommend specifically on this side is like, whatever your job is, you should set up 2 bank accounts or whatever, if it's the 401k that the business has that you never see, if it's, hey, it is 2 checking accounts and this checking account every month goes to wherever it goes to be able to invest or put in the emergency fund, whatever that might be. But it's very important to get started early, because the difference, and go ahead, Mark, go ahead and throw up the slide. But if you start at 25, you're going to be able to take advantage of that money doubling every 7.5 years on 10%, 12%, whatever it ends up being in the market. Maybe it's 8%. But if you don't do that and you start at 45, you start later in life, you just aren't able to take advantage of something that the only difference is putting a little bit away now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hockey stick when the way that it goes up, right? And I mean, there's a crazy stat that if you were to put, base again on normal market increases, if you were to put $50 a month in at 25 and then a person at 45 puts in $500 a month, the 25-year-old still wins.
Yeah.
And it's just as important as that, of like making sure you commit to it and commit to it early. Choosing the best thing isn't always the biggest concern, because your index versus mine might be the difference in, what is it going to be the difference in 650,000 or 720,000? Like, you're still fine.
Sure.
That's better than 50,000.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the piece that I think a lot of people get caught up on. They want the best strategy, and any strategy is better than no strategy. And then from there, you can kind of optimize what's best for you, because you might want to buy a house in 10, 15 years, and your 401k that has a lower fee that allows you to pull that money out is going to be better than an index where you're no longer compounding your interest. Because again, it's a hockey stick. If you take it out right before it goes up, it's not that good.
Yep. And the quicker you can get, I mean, the first $100,000 is tough.
Yep.
And I've talked about that with Mark on the show multiple times. It's like that first milestone is really, really tough to get to. 1,000, 10,000, 50,000. But once you get to that spot, it does feel like you gain a lot of momentum pretty quickly. But ultimately, you do have to get to that spot as fast as you can. And the $50 every other week, the $100 every other week is just such a good start to figure out how to get there and how to continue doing it. And I think we think it's hard because those are our lowest earning years, right? When you become 45, maybe you're in your higher earning years, you're able to put some things aside, and then you start thinking about retirement. But in some ways, not that it's too late. Like, you can always recover at that point by making additional contributions with that extra dollars or whatever. But it's just so much easier if you get started earlier. You save yourself the headache of it on the back end.
Yeah, and that's where, to me, again, the biggest headache saving for me personally is always trying to put it into things that, not that I don't have access to, but that are inconvenient to access to. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm recently decently invested into the crypto space as well, but I only allow myself a 30-day window per year to adjust my holdings there. Now, and there could be a catastrophic event that maybe some weird stuff happens, and I still have access to those things, but like, I just don't want to look at it. I don't want to be thinking about it. I don't want to be checking what's the current price of this and the current price of that. And the same thing's true in the stock market of like, those aren't things that's like, hey, use one of the convenient apps or use a service or an account manager or whatever you want to use. Mm-hmm. But like, just set it up in a context where like you really focus on it for a couple weeks out of the year. But none of that, like, it is what it is. Just let it go. Who cares? Maybe you get a new job and you want to change the number. Maybe you get a pay rate and you want to change the number, whatever. But like, for me, it's all about set it and forget it, because this is something that, again, when you're looking at over 30, 40, 50 years, it's going to be fine. If you're off by 1% or 2%, who cares, as long as you're doing it? Yeah,
and it's so easy looking back, because you've talked about this a couple of times or made some comments about it, but it's like the FOMO of the things you missed out on, the house you should have bought, the crypto you could have bought the Bitcoin at for $12, and now it is what it is. The Nvidia stock is another one that people talk about, the Tesla stock, all of these pieces where it's like, hey, I could have capitalized more. I could have put more into those different things. And this idea of compounding interest isn't necessarily finding those things before everybody else. It's just making sure that you take the time today to actually put that money in a spot where it is in a spot where it can grow. And that's why it's like, when I turn this conversation on its head a little bit, it's like, if you don't do the emergency fund, this doesn't matter, because this is the first money you're going to pull from. So you have to do that piece first, but then don't have FOMO about it. If you put money anywhere, you should be better off today, as once you're younger as opposed to when you're older doing it. So.
Yeah. And I know Mark is a big proponent of the bucket strategy. And I think it's really useful because like, you want to have fun. You want to be able to do stuff. You want to be able to enjoy your life. And I don't think you should be taking away from that piece of it. To me, it's the concept of Parkinson's law with your time. You will fill up your time to make space for anything. If I add 3 more things to your week, you'll be just as busy as you are now. If I take 3 things from your current space, you'll be just as busy as you are now. And that's just because we're really good as humans at filling up those blocks. Just like if I put a set of money in your checking account for you to spend every month, you're going to spend that much. Now, if I take a bigger chunk out and I leave with a smaller bit, you'll make it work, right?
Sure.
And I think part of that should be setting things aside to have fun so that you don't ever risk touching your emergency fund or your savings or investments or whatever those other things are. And that's to me where it's like, what are the things you want to do and enjoy? Because compound interest works in 2 ways. It works in a financial way in the sense of you're going to retire more comfortably and be able to do more things in retirement. But also the memories also have compound interest. Like you need to do those things now. Like, when you take your kid to Disneyland for the first time, it's going to be a really cool thing. It's going to be really cool when they're under the age of 6. It would be a lot less cool if you took them for the first time at 26.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be able to do that at that point.
Well, and I think it's also important because like that will be an extra expense. And I do like the month by month budget. And so there are certain months where it's just tighter. Yeah. Like December is you're always going to spend more in December because of Christmas and travel and family and all those things that kind of come to it, paying for meals, whatever it is, right? So that's not going to be a month where you save as much. And I think if you expand it out to like your entire life, like there's just going to be times where it's just going to be tighter. Yeah. You're not going to be able to put as much money away as you'd like to in those moments. But that doesn't mean that you should never put money in away. It's just there's certain moments where it's going to be really, really challenging. So you might have to put less away. Those, but you still have to consistently do it because if you don't, you end up in this really weird spot.
No, 100%. It depends. Like, and that's when it comes to the saving. We talk about the emergency fund.
Yeah.
It's, when you look at your finances, most people are on some type of salary or hourly rate where they can reasonably, within a couple grand a year say, hey, I'm going to make X per year. Maybe that's 50 grand, maybe it's 100 grand, maybe it's 200 grand, whatever that number is for you, is figuring out what are the percentages that are sustainable to live within those means. And then as you increase your income, keeping those percentages in a reasonably similar thing. Because if right now you're going on mountain trips for $500 to take your family, and then all of a sudden you 10x your salary, it's probably not going to be a $500 mountain trip anymore, right? Like it's probably going $5,000 or going to ski in the Swiss Alps or whatever the thing is, right? But just understanding what those numbers look like and also what is the way that you could enjoy that amount of income the best. But again, it comes down to planning, understanding what you want to do, how you want to do it, how you want to live your life. And I think that's the thing that's helped me a lot is I've always been super tight, but I've also been super locked into a plan since I was young.
Sure. I think also the lifestyle creep thing comes into this, where it's like as you get older, you have more hobbies, desires, trips, furniture, clothing. Yep. Pick your poison, right?
Totally.
I think it's really, really easy for those things to become more and more of a priority over savings. I deserve it. I've worked really hard to get here. I've gone through dark days, whatever it might be. And it's like, I think that's a lot of the trap that people fall into when they have the extra dollars. So just knowing that that is the trap and making sure that it's not that it can't grow. Like you can, dedicate more funds to it, but it can't be so impactful that you stop saving, that you don't put as much into saving, because if the little bit that you start with, if you continue with a little bit, you'll be golden. But you might not end up saving $5 million, where if you were really disciplined and never, decided to get any nice things, then you might have $5 million, right? And so, but that's a trade-off in life. Or do you want $5 million at 65, or do you want to live your life to the fullest, right?
100%. I know you guys talked about it on the show previously, and I really like the analogy to the fitness side of the world. And it's like when you think about this from a cheat meal perspective, right? It's spending is kind of like the cheat meal, but it's one of those when you set up your your fitness plan and you're going to have one cheat meal a week, right? All the way through. Now, sure, if you've had your cheat meal on Tuesday and on Friday you get invited by I don't know, Elon Musk says, let's go get dinner at some place that is absolutely not within your means,
Krispy
Kreme or whatever, right? You take that meal, right?
Yeah, sure.
But that's an extreme example. And your spending should be the same, where it's hey, I've planned for this amount of fun and CJ wants me to go play laser tag on a Friday. That's not in the budget. It's cool. That's something that I could keep, I could live without and I'm not going to super regret. But now CJ's hey, my wife's getting married. we're going to elope this weekend in Vegas. We'd love you to be there. It's like, okay, that's like a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm probably saying yes to that.
Yeah, sure.
And just kind of understanding like, hey, cheat meals are totally fine. Those things happen. Same in your finances, but like also understanding that like once you have one, it's really easy. Like, oh well, we ate out tonight, but hey, CJ's eating dinner tonight, so let's do it again. Yeah, let's do it again. Yeah, avoiding those are the big ones.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if there's any message to the listeners, it's like not being bah humbug, because there's so many fun, impactful moments of life where you need to enjoy them. So I'm an Army guy and I'm a military dude. And I like discipline and I like things being exactly the way I think they're going to be. And I don't like surprises. But ultimately, life is more fun with surprises, and you should enjoy it. Because if you went through life being miserable, so you could have $5 million when you're 65 years old, that might be okay. Yeah. But you're going to have kind of a really tough life to 65, and you better be able to live it to your fullest at 65. And I think most of us make the mistake of like overcompensating one way or the other too much, right?
No, for sure. For me, it's like, it's all about experiences, right? I think that the problem in my mind that heavily impacts our generation, a little bit of the generation above us and definitely the ones below us, is like things matter so much. It's like, hey, your wife needs this new purse that costs a couple grand because all of her friends have
That's a lot. I don't think
I agree though, but it's like you see people, like I'll watch, if you look at people wearing Golden Gooses around all the time, it's like, dude, those are $1,000 shoes. Yeah. And if you walk around near where my home is now, like most of the women are wearing those. And it's like,
it's crazy.
This is crazy. What are we doing here? But it's not to say that those are inherently the worst pieces of things, depending on if they're within their percentage of income, it is what it is. But to me, you get so much more enjoyment out of going out, going to walk around a festival, going on a bike ride, going hiking a trail and stuff like that. Just going outside and doing things is going to be stuff you remember a whole lot more than the cool pair of shoes, the cool purse.
And that stuff's cheap.
We
love that.
That's cheap. Yeah, 100%. Just living in the real world is crazy in terms of its importance for people.
Yeah, exactly. Taking the time to just enjoy the world is definitely part of that. Part of this compounding interest, we have a couple, maybe 2 minutes here, but I want to just address it. Social Security. It's one of those things. When do you draw it? Do you draw it earlier? Do you draw it later? Why do you draw it? Can you live on it? The answer to that question is you probably shouldn't try and live on it, but you could if you cut some corners, right? It's just going to be really, really minimal, and you're not going to enjoy retirement at all. But it's interesting because you can wait longer to get more with Social Security. And so that might be an individual conversation with your advisor, whoever you're talking to about it. Should you draw earlier? Should you draw later, and why?
It's also when you think about things like your 401k account or whatever, is it's getting that compound interest later in its years as well as you were becoming later in your years. It's one of those things, if you start taking 4, 5, 6, maybe 10% of that a year, it's going to wipe out the 4, 5, 6, maybe 10% of your gains, right?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be going into the negative depending on the years, but it does mean that your number's not going to get any bigger at some point because you're going to be pulling from it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So make sure to ask your advisor about when you should take Social Security, because that is definitely a conversation where for some folks it does make sense to grab it sooner and some later because of the compounding stuff.
Totally. And also depending on the age of you and your spouse or significant other, it's like, one might take it, the other might keep working or whatever the case is. Like, there's a lot of strategies that relate to that.
Yeah, and a lot of folks, I'm sure will ask that question. So, and there's so many variables behind it. It's really hard to give a blanket answer on when. Sure. But like I said, it could be either way for most folks. Okay, let's go to our next topic: free investing.
Free money is the best.
I'll take free money.
I like free money.
You want to give me some free money?
I do not want to give you free money.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe the folks on the please.
Would be nice. I do take that.
No, free money. I think one of the big things we're talking about here is we're talking about investment accounts. First off, and I think the one that's the most obvious is your employer might offer some kind of 401k. If there's a match, always do it. You should always take advantage of free money, and that's like the invisible dollars. You're not going to see them. They're going to come out, and it's going to be totally worth it on the back end if they're going to match anything. So,
yeah, I think they'll play a little bit of a devil's advocate there. I think that it is the best set it and forget it strategy. If you don't want to deal with your money, if you don't want to be actively a part of it, it's kind of like if you're the person that you want the gains in crypto, but you don't want to be stressed about it every day.
No risk.
You should just buy it and then forget about it and then look every couple years and be like, oh, wow, this number's bigger. This is nice. The 401k is just like that in the investing world. If you're the type of person that wants to play on a Robinhood app and then go through and change your stocks and do all that other stuff, like, there is a world where if you didn't do the 401k employer match and you did manage yourself, you could outpace the 401k number depending on what your options are investing in.
Sure.
So it's not a perfect strategy, but I do think if you want to put forth low effort, it is the highest return on the lowest effort every time, because you don't have to do anything. Your employer is giving you free money. They're putting it into an account, and then it just does stuff. You pick, usually depending on how your company has set it up, you usually pick, do I want to be very risky, not risky, or very not risky? And which one of those three do you want to go with? Roll on.
Yeah. One of the things we see a lot with clients when they come in at the advising office is there's normally a plethora of 401k accounts.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of folks do take advantage of this.
Yep.
And they end up with 5 or 6, 7 or 8, whatever, because there was a match. They decided they were going to do this match. And at a certain point, one, you can combine those things if you want to. You don't have to. You can also roll them over to Roth IRAs, doing Roth IRA conversions as part of it. But I think you can't go wrong in the fact that those are normally free money everywhere you look on that side. And just know that you're going to end up with a variety of ones from different companies. And at some point, you're going to have to do something with those. And they normally, I mean, we've seen a range from like, they might have $4,000 in them, $20,000 or fees or different things kind of rolled up into them. And so you have to pay attention to those. And it's hard to manage 8 accounts. And so I don't recommend trying to manage 8 accounts once you get to your late 50s, 60s, if you've had a couple jobs and you've done any of these things. And I think that's also changed because so many people have different jobs nowadays. They don't just have one career. You're in a bunch of different places. So you very rarely see somebody who has all their money in one IRA account, because it just doesn't happen that way. So just make sure that you're paying attention to those accounts, that you manage them, and you figure out, because some of them need rebalancing, right? Because they're normally invested in the market in some way. But
it is one of those things, especially when you think about specifically from the company's free match.
Yeah.
That it's like, we have a graphic that kind of goes into a little bit of it, but it's like the concept is they're literally saying, hey, we like you as an employee. We want to give you a free benefit.
Yeah.
A lot of times these employers are matching up to 6% at 50 or 100% rate. And that does end up being a lot of money. Like most of these, we're in a banking capital. So everyone here for the most part has some type of bank or finance job in Charlotte. So with that, a lot of those jobs are reasonably high paying. They're making $100K a year. And if your bank is matching 100% of your 6% of your income, that's a free $6,000 bonus a year. And that does add up, especially if you're at a company for 10, 20 years. That's 60 to 120 grand before you factor in the insurance or interest.
Yeah.
And then if you've obviously matched that, you're at, you could be 10, 20 years in and you could be sitting on $250,000 to $500,000. And that's pre-interest. That's if the market's not been good, you're pretty safe on that. Yeah. And a lot of people just don't take advantage of this.
Yeah. And the other one is some companies will offer a match on Roth accounts as well. And that's like the super account. So if you don't know, the Roth account is you put money in, it gets taxed, but when you take it out, no tax is paid. So you make everything you gain becomes, hey, this is free money, and it's a great tool to be able to use in retirement because you don't have to pay taxes on it, which is one of the biggest things when you're withdrawing money on the back end of
and that's a big piece, is like being diverse as you kind of as you increase your age, depending on what you want to spend. Like I'm a little bit greedy when it comes to the concept of, obviously I'm still in my early 30s, and it's like I want my money and I want to be able to spend it now.
Yeah.
So I've always been a little bit nervous of these accounts, because when I look at like a 401k or an IRA, it's like, this would be really good if I was 50, 60, 70 years old. But like right now, it's like, if I want to go buy a house, there might be a penalty with that 401k. If I want to take this money out to go buy a stupid car in a midlife crisis, like my IRA might charge me additional money just because I haven't met the age threshold.
Yeah.
And I still think they're very good accounts. But again, it depends. Are you trying to be a person that leaves the corporate world at 30 or 40? Or are you trying to be a person that you think is going to, be a little bit more like normal and conservative and safe? Because there are risks associated with that. The market could change any day. If you're just invested in the S&P or an index or whatever, like we've had a really good run since about 2008, and that run could end tomorrow.
Yeah.
It could also end in 10 years.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I think, so I'm obviously studying for the Series 65 exam to be a financial advisor, working on all those things. And one of the things that we look at in that testing sphere is there are actually certain exceptions for the 401k that you can withdraw those funds without any kind of penalties.
Yep.
Yeah, because normally you have to wait till you're 59 and a half.
Yep.
Right? But the two that come to my mind are first-time homeowners. So if you're buying your first-time home, you can pull money out of that without a penalty to be able to pay for the down payment on the house. The other one is labor costs. So if you're having a child or whatever, any delivery fees, things you have to pay out of pocket on the medical expenses, that's one of those other things that comes out penalty-free. And you have to check your individual IRA to figure out all those little pieces. But just know that I didn't know that until recently, and I think it's really dope because those are definitely some opportunities that I would have taken advantage of.
Totally. And that's probably stuff that, I worked at a ton of jobs and had a ton of different 401k options over the years. Yeah. And when you're given those options, that might be in the fine print, but I'm not reading that.
Yeah.
I'm
totally.
Seeing, the thing I look at is what is percent match number? What is number? Do I want to do that? And that's pretty much, do I want to do, again, very risky, not that risky, very not risky. What of those boxes I want to check? It's not, hey, at the time I'm 22, 23, 24 years old looking at these. I didn't think about in 4 or 5 years, I might be buying a house or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
My wife might have a kid one day. Those are options that I didn't consider at that age. But now looking back, like you said, if people were scattered over 3, 4, 401ks, you could use that for these type of funds.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's really important because, you can ask a financial advisor to look at that stuff too. And so if you wanted to contact a financial advisor, your financial advisor, our office, whatever, we can review that stuff for you, or you can just read it yourself. It's just kind of boring, but you could do it and find what the actual exceptions are because they're normally on the documents. So
100%. The other piece too that we really like is when you think, I mentioned this a little bit early, but when you look at index funds, when you look at aggregates of stocks and those, you tend to pay a fee for those.
Sure.
But you can kind of joke that it's, it's one fund to rule them all. That's what our little graphic here says. And it's when you think about this, when I look at the returns, the second bullet point to me is the most important here because it's averaged a 10% return annually for the last century, right? That is 100 years running, we've averaged 10%. Now, Wall Street math is kind of gamified because, if you go down 50% this year, up 50% the next year, and then up 10% the year after that, or 20 or 30, then technically you're at about a 10% year over year average, but you are not back to the same amount of money, depending if there's a 50% loss. So there is a little bit of wishy-washiness in that 10% Wall Street number there, but it does aggregate true for the most part over time. And a lot of these managed service fees, they're not that much at scale. Now, if you're super high net worth, yes, it might be a percentage. So if you're putting tens of millions of dollars in there, you might be losing a % or two. And yes, that might be hundreds of thousands. But again, if you've got tens of millions, a percentage fee is not that significant.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard to beat the S&P 500.
100%.
Nobody really does.
Yeah.
It's kind of the winner of all of them. But there might be, as you set up your 401k over the years, there might be, you need to do a little bit of reclassification of where those funds are, like you were talking about from the riskiness scale. Because if you tell that person, hey, I'm 22 years old, I want to take this money and turn it into $1 billion as quick as I can, you might be really high risk. But there's also, as that changes over the next 10, 20, 30 years, you want to lower the risk on those, rebalance to other stuff. Because there's so many different types of funds, right? There's technology stock, healthcare, manufacturing, international funds, international currencies. And there's so many differences. And a lot of these funds can be built on a lot of those different pieces, right? And depending on what's going on in the world, sometimes you don't want some of those pieces in your funds.
Totally. And that's why, I, for the most part, again, this is back to the 401k piece, is if you're a person that does not want to worry about that and focus about that as an individual, then, seek professional help. There are people out there that do this all the time. That is their full-time job. And I assure you, unless you want it to be your full-time job, they are probably going to be better than you. And even if you want it to be your full-time job, if they've done it for 20, 30 years, I'm never going to beat Warren Buffett. There's no chance.
Sure.
He's about to retire, and I'm certain he could, with 4 hours a day, still smoke me if I worked 10 hours a day.
Sure.
And it's in those situations, you just got to go with what's fun. And if you find it fun, then do it because you think it's fun. But just know that, a professional probably will net be you in that. Yeah. And it's I don't know what the healthcare industry is going to do next year. Now, somebody that works in it, they might specifically know about their industry. But otherwise, these should be tools that you're using to leverage, not tools that become something that consume more of your time. And that's why I like the 401ks. I like these indexes because, again, I can just say, hey, smart people, pick me the smartest pool of things that you think are good. Yep. Okay, cool. You think it's going to average this? I believe in you. you've been right a lot. And that's kind of the way I like to look at it.
Well, and I mean, when we talk about passively managed funds and actively managed funds, you know, because you could be in either one of those.
You could be in both.
You could be in both at the same time too. And so some of that stuff is fire and forget. We put it there, we leave it alone. And other ones, when you have more fees, normally they're higher fee accounts because you have somebody who's actively managing that stuff. They're rebalancing it for you every day.
And it's also some of the things like right now. I mean, there's a lot of like, you know, kind of joke and fun at the fact of there's the Pelosi tracker, there's the inverse Kramer tracker, and you do have to pay fees for these services. I mean, you're paying like $100 or $200 or whatever it is a year for those services to follow those trades and make them on your behalf. But it's the same thing. If you go make trades yourself, you might incur fees. If you have a broker do it, you might incur fees. So like, you just got to read the fine print on that. And it's like, is this something that you find fun? Also, just know that it is pretty much gambling. So if you do not like gambling the most, just know that you probably should participate a little less. But yeah, that's why I like to set it and forget. I have a couple of things that I'll actively manage and look at just because I'm a technologist. I want to be a part of the industry and I like to be involved in that specific one. But I don't know the current trends of, you know, precious metals or, you know, oil.
Gold's good right now.
It's one of those, like, I'm not looking at now. NVIDIA, that directly impacts me on the daily basis. Because I'm still trying to get hard drives and, you know, that's all screwed up.
Good, no RAM right now either. None. I totally had a thought. I want to talk to you about, sorry, I totally lost where I was going with it. But
the RAM just got you too excited.
Well, it did. It was about, not fees, but how you, I can't remember. I think I'm lost. I lost my train of thought. But ultimately, wrapping up this segment, if you would, you know, make sure that you're taking advantage of free money and put it into the S&P 500 because it's the best thing that's going to win every time.
Yeah, I mean, it does consistently win, but don't put everything in there. Like that's, I'm a huge proponent of like, you know, back to the percentages. Like that's, I've always been fortunate to have what I feel has been a very good financial plan for me. And it is kind of living your life based on those percentages. But when I think about my investing percentage, that percentage is then split into a whole bunch of different other things, right? Like some things go to physical investments, some things go to company investments, some things go to stocks or indexes or bond and gold. Like, I mean, I have precious metals, I have bonds at times and CDs. It just depends on what makes sense for the moment, right? Like my wife's brother, my brother-in-law just had their first kid, and we just kind of set up an account for their daughter for their 18th birthday, right? So we just set up a little high yield savings account. We're going to probably throw some CDs in there over time. You know, that way when she turns 18, if she wants to go to college, we can help with that. If she wants to get a car, we can help with that. If she wants to start a business, we can help with that. But there's also, you know, if you think your kid's going to go to college for sure, then a 529 account makes a ton of sense. Just depends on, like, you know, what are those percentages? How do you set them up? And what makes the most sense for your life? Because you might have kids or you might want kids. You might not. So that's not a strategy you need to worry about. So just very different.
Let's do some Q&A.
All right, let's rock it. What's the first one you got?
Okay, we're going to start with you, Dylan.
Okay.
We can answer these together too, though. Okay, a chat user, Kayla.
Okay.
Kayla is 33. She is a teacher's aide. And she, her question is, emergency fund or pay off my 8-card credit card debt first? Cards are 22% interest, and it feels impossible.
Hey, Trump's trying to make that 10%. So, I mean, that's kind of
nice. That's right. That would be, a little of that side.
That would be nice.
The war on the credit card companies.
I do think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Some people say you should do the snowball method. You should throw a whole bunch of money at it. Depending on what your current credit is, what does that look like? You can usually roll into a single card that basically delays interest for a period of time.
Consolidation loan.
Consolidation setup. That's a decent play. But I'm big team, like, you still want an emergency fund, because what's going to suck worse is you spend the next 6 to 12 months of your life trying to, you know, eat ramen noodles for the next 6 to 12 months. And that way you can pay off your credit card debt. And then your car blows an alternator or whatever it is, right? And then bang, you're back to $4,000 or $5,000 in credit card debt. You could do nothing. So if you kind of tackle it at both points, like, you might pay a little bit more in interest, but you're going to feel a little bit better knowing that, hey, I actually do have the money for this and I could do this without it being at 22%. So I'd try to focus on the consolidation if you can, and then try to come up with a rapid strategy. But you still should, in my opinion, lean towards both, right?
I think the safety net you talked about, really, I love that analogy of like, hey, if I fall, I can still be okay here. And that's why I like the emergency fund on this side. The other piece of this is, like, these are hard times, Kayla. Like, this is not like an easy, you know, you're just kind of going through the battle, and everyone goes through these battles. And I think one of the things that comes to the forefront of my mind is like, make sure you're paying attention to what are the luxuries in your life that you like. I'm not saying don't do anything fun ever, but I'm saying that there might be some areas where you can cut. Can you try and bring that electricity bill down by making sure the lights are off? You know, going out to eat is a luxury thing. You know, DoorDash, all these food delivery services.
Don't do DoorDash.
I know we don't like these things. I know Dylan and I hate them. Maybe that's part of your crutch, but like take the time, go grab the food or whatever. Find cheaper alternatives to what you're trying to do, because you're just such in this critical spot where if you do have something big that happens, your credit card debt's just going to go up more, right? And so you have to be able to battle that safety net and bringing that credit card down, that debt down. And I think, like I said, it's going to be challenging, but try and look at every little piece of your puzzle to figure out, is this a spot where I can cut just a little bit to try and save for either of those things? And I think you'll win if you attack both of them.
No, for sure. We had a issue recently where about a year, maybe almost a year ago, my wife, when we first got together, she had a dog. We still have the dog, obviously, but it's getting a little bit older now. So in its old age, it ended up getting had some like medical thing wrong with it. We had to do surgery and some other stuff like that. And that's not the cheapest thing in the world. So obviously any random incurred expense, my wife is like, oh, cool, this sucks. Now we have spent a lot of money. We need to save money. We have to be tight for a little while, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So as she's kind of going through that, she was looking at this. What are the things you can cut out? And she works in Center City every single day. So when she goes to the office, you know, getting a croissant and a drink at Starbucks in the morning happened to be a frequent occurrence.
Sure.
And the really nice apartment building we live in has free coffee and snacks. It's basically the same.
Yeah.
So in swapping that, it's in the beginning, it was like, oh, cool, we're being more frugal. But then like a month later, she's like, it's literally the same. And I don't spend like $9 a day.
Yeah.
I spend none. And it's like $9 a day adds up, because we were talking earlier about putting $50 a month away. That is 1 week of Starbucks coffee.
Exactly.
You could literally have it the other 3.
Yeah. And like, that's not fun, right? No. Like there's nothing fun about that, but it might be the right answer. And you know, whether it's the grocery store coffee too, whether it's Costco, Sarah and I are big Costco folk right now. And we go and buy the breakfast sandwiches over there, which they end up being about $1.30 a direct breakfast sandwich. Right. Yeah. But if I go to the coffee store next to here or whatever, it's going to be $6.
It's not $1.30.
And so like just those little things that like require a little bit of prep too might be worth it in these moments of hardship for sure.
100%. And like you said earlier, it's you still are going to have exceptions. Don't not have fun. Just like we talked about with the cheap meals and you know, the crazy cool trip you had to go on or whatever. It's like same thing with this. It's like if you're having the worst day of your entire life and nothing's going to make you feel better than a pumpkin spice latte, then, you know, rip that thing. But just also be responsible enough to not start doing it every day again.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Give me one. What you got?
The next one we have Derek, who is a mechanic, 48, has 0 in his retirement savings. Half his friends believe that they are going to be, you know, okay with Social Security. And the question is, should he even bother saving right now, or is Social Security going to cut it?
Oh, Derek. Derek missed segment 2, which I hate for Derek, you know, and true. It's never too late to get started, Derek. You can't, I mean, I wouldn't say throw in the towel, give up. Obviously, you're a little bit older. You're nearing, you know, probably your prime working area. So you're going to have more money coming in for that side. And so you just got to save more aggressively. It's kind of the same story with Kayla where I would say you got to find places to cut here. I think this one is like, you just have to find major ways to cut to be able to invest into savings, because Social Security is going to pay you every month. Which is great, right? Maybe you do. It doesn't say here whether you've got any debt or any of that stuff. But if you have debt and you have to worry about it, are you going to still have a mortgage when you try and retire? All those pieces are going to matter at this, because you can live off Social Security if you have no debt for sure. You can live off it. You're not going to have an amazing life, but you'll be okay. You'll live a kind of sad, if I'm honest, like retirement. It won't be living any kind of you won't be free of the burdens of financial, you know, freedom. But you'll have to deal with a lot of stuff. But I think it's one of those things where you're just going to have to be really disciplined and put more money away faster towards those retirement accounts so you can take advantage of them, because they have catch-up accounts. You're actually going to qualify for those relatively soon, where you can be able to say, hey, I can put extra money towards my IRAs, my Roths, whatever, to try and put that stuff away. But get disciplined about it and start now, you know?
Yeah, I think a really good question as well, and not just from, you know, the outside that I think more people would be curious into is if you could travel back in time now, knowing what you do in your first, 6 to 12 months as, in the financial space, what would you say to 5-year into the working force CJ to put today's mid-30s CJ in a better spot? Just save more, save differently?
Yeah, I think the mistake I made was what we were talking about. My emergency fund was huge. It was just too much, right? And it wasn't, those weren't not like, that was straight in a savings account, like 0.5%.
And I do think it's worth noting that you came from the military as well. So the military does tend to help you save and save early.
Yeah.
It also gives you access to things like financial advisors and a lot of tools that those guys don't use.
Exactly, right? And so I think for me, it would have been putting money in, investments accounts sooner, for taking advantage of matches. There's a couple jobs I didn't do that with because I don't know, you're in your 20s. You don't really care about
signing the paperwork and move on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get all my fun stuff in for the day, man.
100%.
And so you don't really think about those things. So I put away a bunch, if I'm honest. I took advantage of a lot of different opportunities to put money away, but I could have done more, and I probably wouldn't have felt it today. And I think even saying that is like crazy because I did so much more than I think most people do. So it's like, I could have still done more, and I would have been better off for it because of this compounding interest thing that we're talking about, But yeah, let's go to the next question.
Sure.
For sure. Let's dive into one. Let's go to Jamal. Okay. Jamal is a delivery driver. His job offers a 401k with a 50% match up to 6%. He contributes 2% now, but is it worth bumping it when the bills are tight currently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's tough. I mean, like we said earlier, I'm a big fan of, when you look at the Parkinson's law of you will elevate or lower to the status that you put yourself, whether that's in time or whether that's with finances as well. Yeah. Like you might make some concessions and some cuts in that capacity. And again, I don't know what those luxuries are, or what they look like.
Yeah.
I would say if you're not doing anything extra and it's not something you're actively managing or actively participating in, then I would say max that sucker out. Now, if it is one of those where, hey, your dream is you're going to open your own pastry place one day and you're trying to stoke cash away to be able to do that, your 401k is not going to help you with that. You're not going to be able to take really cash without a penalty against the 401k. So you should be setting money aside in that context over there. But it just depends on what's your long-term plan.
Yeah.
Is your long-term plan to stay with this employer, to keep going in that direction, to try to build up tenure, get more 401k and like ride this out? Because, most companies don't offer pensions anymore. So, most people aren't going to get that lucky to have a pension. So your best case is either to stack money as you can in a 401k or a Roth IRA or something like that. And then maybe later down the line, look at purchasing an annuity or something like that for guaranteed income. But because, like you said, Social Security is probably not the best strategy. So you definitely want something that is a little bit more safe and guaranteed every month later in life. Because the 401k is like, you're going to have a big number, but you're going to take that big number out. Yeah. It's not the same as income. It's a different type of money.
Yeah. And the way I'm thinking about this is, I don't know if when you were in school as a college graduate, myself as well, a college graduate, do you remember the class where they were like, hey, this is how you prepare for retirement? These are the things you have to do. Yes, you missed that class.
See, I took entrepreneurship, and they basically said you're never going to retire. It's crazy. They're basically like, what do you want to do? You're going to do that forever.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when our parents looked at retirement, they still had the opportunities to be able to get a pension.
Yeah.
Right. You work for ExxonMobil for 40 years, you get a pension. That's who you leave with. And I think we didn't get the memo. There wasn't like a piece of paper that went out that said, hey, by the way, the pensions are gone. Your retirement's on you.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I would look at you, Jamal, and I would say, hey, your retirement's on you, man. And if right now today you're like, hey, the bills are tight and I can only do this much to be able to take advantage of that stuff, that's cool. Right. Like, I get it. There's hard times in life that you're going through and like that sucks. But I would say, hey, let's take a real look at everything. And I say everything. Look at your auto insurance. Look at your car that you own today. Do you have a car? Can you get a car that's cheaper, right? Can you move pieces of the puzzle around on the insurance side too? Can you shop around? Go ask get a bunch of different quotes and figure out, hey, I'm still covered if I get this plan and I'm saving this much a month. That might be worth it for you just because it's so tight right now. And I think those are the things you have to go the extra mile. Take a second, look at everything that you possibly can to try and find those dollars, because you really don't want to miss out on free money. And I think we've beat this to death this whole episode, but it's like, if somebody's going to give you $1 for free, you always want to take advantage of it. So I would agree with making sure that you can get to that 6% match at least. But I understand if times are hard and you have to wait a year before you can get in a spot to do that, then wait a year.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a 15-year mortgage and you're trying to pay off your house aggressively and you've only got 2 or 3 left, then okay, sure, you're about to get an extra $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 a month or whatever it was that you're going towards that aggressive mortgage payment. So it's like stuff like that makes sense because, you know, the interest you're going to be losing on a house with principal and everything else could be crazy. Same's true with your car. Maybe that's the best strategy, but the car is going to be paid off in 6 months or whatever it is. So there are those moments that you kind of want to get to those checkpoints along the way, but it's also, you know, understanding your finances, know what you're looking at, look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
Have a complete concept of what's going on.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it starts with like, hey, where's your budget?
Yeah.
Like, let's just look at the budget and figure out what it looks like and figure out, is this the best budget for you right now? Because a lot of times you can find empty dollars in that stuff. The subscription that you don't use anymore, that you still pay $20 a month for, you know, find that thing, punch it in the face, get rid of 100%. It, you know?
And it's also like, it doesn't have to be some crazy budget that the most strict thing where it's like, you know, there are people who in the fitness world, again, where they'll count every single macro and they aren't in that good of shape. There's other people that don't count any macros and they look beautiful. and you obviously can income your way out of a lot of problems.
Sure.
But like, even when I was making really, really high income, I always made it a very big point to, you know, inflation's gotten crazy now, so it's went up a little bit. But back when I was younger and working, you know, I didn't want to ever spend more than if I lived off of $40,000 a year of income, because at that point in time here, like I knew that I could make far more than that. But if I stayed under 40, I would always be good. So I didn't even really check my finances as long as I stayed under that threshold. If I got close to that threshold, is it, oh, cool, is my house payment was hurting me? Is my car payment was hurting me? Whatever. But as long as I stayed under that threshold, it's kind of like, hey, we're having a little bit of fun. We're being still conservative. But again, I've always been a pretty tight person. And I was also fortunate to when I was much younger, I blew money when I was young and dumb. And so by the time I became an adult, it wasn't like I didn't really have the impulse to buy the crazy stuff. It's like I'd already gotten that out when I was a kid. So by the time I was in my mid-20s, it was like, all right, cool. Like I don't need these shiny things. It's like, all right, we'll just kind of enjoy life and you know, do stuff like go to baseball games or cheap things because I enjoy that. I would rather spend $10 to go to a Knights minor league game here and $26 to go watch the Charlotte FC play soccer right now. That's a protein. You can spend $26 a weekend for a ticket. Like that's time.
A
heck of a time. That's half your week at Starbucks of coffee.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Those are the right thing. I mean, these are the questions that come in that, I mean, they pull this thing that we're calling life right here is complicated and has different layers to it and different challenges. And so keep navigating life, keep sending the questions in, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. And ultimately, this is another episode of the Wealth Help Desk, and we're glad we could help you guys out and answer some questions and hang out. So
I'm going to ring this bell.
That's the end right there.
Yeah, I just wanted to do that.
We'll see you later. Have a great day.
That's all I wanted to do.